So here we have Unraid 7.2. Let's check it out and see what's new.
Hi Unraiders, and welcome to another Uncast video. Now, Unraid 7.2 is officially released and stable, and there's a lot to cover. I'm going to be demonstrating the main headline features, things like you can see from the image in the background here, things like RAIDZ Expansion, the new Filesystem support, and the responsive WebGUI. But I'm also going to walk through some other smaller improvements and fixes that you might not have noticed in the release notes. So stick around through the whole video, because there are some really nice quality of life changes buried in here that could actually make a difference in how you're using your Unraid server day to day. So anyway, let's start with the big stuff, and then we'll dig into some of those hidden gems later on. So first on the agenda, let's start with the responsive web UI. So you're sitting on a couch about to watch your favorite movie, when suddenly media server's not responding. No problem, just grab your phone. The web UI is now fully responsive, so whether you're on a phone, tablet or any other device, it automatically adapts to fit your screen. No need to get up, head to your PC or grab a laptop. Managing Unraid from a mobile device is now actually practical. So here, scrolling through the dashboard, we can see the widgets are stacked one on top of each other. And looking at the processor here, there's actually something different. I'm not going to say what it is. We'll come back to this when we're not looking at it on the cell phone. But now it's super easy to check your Docker containers. We can just scroll down to the widget, see what's running. There we are, the MB server's not running, so just start it up straight from the cell phone. Really, really cool. Let's just scroll back up to the top of the page a moment. Let's click onto the main tab here. Now watch this, you can scroll whole sections left and right without scrolling the rest of the page. So here I'm scrolling my array, now my cache drive. So the web UI on mobile devices is so much better. You can't remember how it used to be? Well, let me show you. So here on the same page on the same server, everything's on one page and we have to pinch and zoom to try and find things. Scroll around, really difficult to actually operate the system. And check out what the dashboard was like on a cell phone on 7.1. Really hard again. If you wanted to start or stop a container, you have to scroll around, find it. And I find if I even just click onto the actual container on a cell phone, I don't get the context window. Anyway, so back to the shiny new web UI. Let's add a new share straight from the cell phone. So really easy. We can just type in the name and also the other bits and pieces as well. Just type all the details in. Drop down menu choices just pop up in their own little window, so it's super easy. Really is very easy to do even fairly complex things on the mobile web UI. Also the fun things, if we go across to community applications, if we're choosing the next container we want to install, well, really easy. You can see here how we can easily just scroll through things and choose what we want. So no, this isn't a mobile app, but for most of us I think it gives us control of our Unraid servers on mobile devices. But could we have a mobile app? Well yes, now that Unraid has built-in API, developers can build native mobile apps, and in fact one of our awesome community members, S3PPO, has been working on exactly that. Now this is completely open source, still in development, and it's running entirely off the new Unraid API. You can do things like check array status, manage Docker containers, control VMs, all from a native mobile app. And this is just one example of what the API enables. So the API is fully baked into the OS now, and for using that app I needed to generate an API key, and we can do that from here in settings, in management access. Then at the top here we can see the various API info, and the last tab here is where we can generate an API key. And you can see here one's automatically generated here for Connect, and this one I generated for the mobile app. Now talking of the API, if we look in the top right hand corner here, you'll see this bell icon. Now this is the first major thing built with the API. Now all of our notifications are handled over here, so no more having to close lots of little pop-ups with your notifications. Here we can see all different types of notifications. You can see I don't have any here at the moment. And also you can archive them and look at archived ones as well, and delete the archived ones if you want to. Now another neat feature is we can go straight to the notification settings from here as well. So this gives you a centralized view of all of your system notifications in one place. It's so much cleaner than the old system. And as more of the WebGUI gets migrated to use the API, you're going to see a lot more improvements like this in the future. Now for the next feature, I'm going to move on to another server. And let's talk about what I think is one of the biggest features in Unraid 7.2, and that's RAIDZ Expansion. This honestly is huge. For those who aren't familiar, ZFS RAIDZ pools have traditionally had a major limitation. Once you've created them, you are stuck with that configuration. So if you had a 4-drive RAIDZ1 pool and wanted more space, you had two options: replace every drive with larger drives one at a time, or add an entirely new vdev, meaning you'd need to add another set of drives all at once. You couldn't just add a single drive to expand your existing RAIDZ array. Now, this has probably been one of the most requested features in the ZFS community, literally, I would say, for probably over a decade. It's been a long-standing limitation that made ZFS less flexible than other storage solutions, especially for home users who just want to grow their storage gradually as they can afford to add new drives. Well, with Unraid 7.2, that limitation has finally gone. We can now expand RAIDZ1, Z2 and Z3 pools by adding one drive at a time. So really, this is a game changer, I think, for anyone running ZFS pools. You're no longer locked into that initial configuration. Anyway, let me show you how this works in practice. You can see here, I've got a RAIDZ1 pool that's one vdev of 4 devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another drive to expand this. If we have a look at what's on here, just one share called media, not much in it, some old public domain movies. But imagine this was actually full up and I'd run out of space and I wanted to actually add a bit more storage. Well, the first thing to do is to stop the array. Then here's my RAIDZ pool. So all I'm going to do is just change the slots from 4 to 5. And I'm going to add another drive. So here I've got another 500 gig SSD. I'm going to add this. And we can see here it says that all existing data is going to be overwritten when the array is started. So you can't add a drive with things already on it. It will erase it. But that's fine. It's not going to erase these other drives. It's just going to add this to our RAIDZ array. Okay, so with that done, I'm just going to click on to start. And we can see that other drive is now there. So let's actually click onto the pool here. And if I scroll down here, we can see the status of the expansion. Now this is happening very quickly for me because I don't have much data on there and it's a small drive. Okay, so we can see the expansion's complete. Nothing's going on here. And so now I've added another 500 gigs to this pool. So now I want to move on and look at these two pools here. Now they both look like standard ZFS mirrors. And if I look at my cache here, we can see this is a ZFS mirror, one vdev of 2 devices. Now this one looks the same, but if we look here, this in fact is RAIDZ1. It's one vdev of 2 devices as well. And obviously, because there's only 2 drives here, it is in fact a mirror. So you might be wondering, why would you create a 2-drive RAIDZ1 when functionally it's the same as a mirror? Well, that's a really good question, because with a traditional mirror, as we can see here, we're stuck with a mirror. And adding another drive, as you can see here, just gives us a triple mirror and hasn't actually expanded anything. However, but if we're to add an extra drive to the RAIDZ1 mirror, now you can see we can benefit from the additional size of that drive. So let's go back to the 2 mirrors how they were, the standard mirror and the RAIDZ1. Performance-wise, right now with just 2 drives, they're basically identical. Both give you the capacity of 1 drive with redundancy from the second. The 2-drive RAIDZ1, in fact, actually has slightly worse performance because of the parity overhead, but for most home users in real-world scenarios, you're not really going to notice that. But once you add the 3rd drive, that's when RAIDZ1 starts to show its advantages with the better storage efficiency and the ability to keep expanding. So basically, if you think you're going to start with 2 drives and you might want to add one later, go with the RAIDZ1. If you want the best possible performance and you might want to add an additional mirror, then go with the traditional mirror. Okay, we're not done with storage improvements yet. There's another really cool feature I want to show you. Imagine you're a photographer with years of work stored across multiple hard drives, a shelf full of irreplaceable photos with no redundancy. If one drive fails, you've lost everything on it. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could just plug those drives into Unraid and get parity protection without having to copy off everything first? Well, now you can. So let's go back to the server and see how to do that. And we're going to look at doing this in 2 different ways. Firstly, on a server that doesn't have an array, setting it up from scratch on a new array. That's much easier. But also we're going to be taking a second look at doing this on another server that already has an array in place. and we're going to be adding the drives to that. Now this is the server we were looking at a moment ago, of course, and it's just got 2 Z pools, that alpha pool here, and also a second pool called cache. The important thing is though, there's no array, and if we scroll down here, we can see a collection of 4 drives. Now there's an NTFS and 2 separate exFAT drives. The other one I can use as parity. So let's stop the array, and now if we go to the top here, we can add some slots. Now by default there's 2 parity slots, so we're going to be adding 3 data drives, so we need to select 5 slots. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm only going to add the data drives to start with. I'm not going to add anything in the parity. And if you're wondering why, there's a very good reason. That's because you don't want to accidentally add one of your data disks as the parity. If you did that by mistake, when we come to start up the array, well, it would actually wipe that drive, start calculating parity, and write over the data. So in my opinion, it's much safer, just select what you think are the data drives first, and then we can start the array, and if everything looks good afterwards, we can then add the parity. Well, we can see I've got exFAT, NTFS, and exFAT, so that's looking good. Let's have a look on the drives first. Okay, so I've got this one here, old pictures of Kuma, that was my old dog. There's a picture of him as a puppy, look how cute he is, hey. And there's a picture of him when he was older. So this was my first dog that I owned myself, so I wouldn't want to lose those pictures. So really nice to be able to back up them with parity. So on this drive, the NTFS, I've got some things from one of my Windows machines. And the final drive here, there's some old pictures from 2005. Okay, so let's get this parity protected now. So let's scroll down and stop the array. And now we can add a parity drive. So the parity drive just has to be bigger than all of the data drives. Now I've only got a 1 terabyte drive, but if I was setting this up for real, I'd probably put something a lot bigger in because I wouldn't want to be limited to 1 terabyte drives. But then again, you might have a second Unraid license and just have a few 1 terabyte drives you want to parity protect, and you can just set up a server just for that. Okay, so let's scroll down and start the array. And now we can see parity is building. And we can see here the parity is building, and it says it's going to take about 3 hours. Ah, the good old days when a whole parity sync was 3 hours long, hey? Anyway, let's fast forward to when the parity sync's finished. So now all of the data is protected, and we've successfully made an array out of a bunch of disks we found on a shelf. Okay, so now I think let's have a look at a server that's got an existing array and how we'd add these same disks to this array without losing any data and using the existing parity drive that we have here. If we scroll down a bit, we can see the existing NTFS and 2 exFAT drives are here, and I'm going to make them part of this array. Now, before we go any further, I just want to give a really big warning. Don't just stop your array and add your old drives you've found on a shelf to the existing array as it is. If you do that, it will wipe them and you'll lose your data. In order to add new drives to an existing array with data on, we need to break the parity. Now yes, this will leave our existing array unprotected until we rebuild the parity, but what this will mean is we can actually add drives with data on by creating a new configuration and basically setting up a new array. So it's this next part that's the important step. So with the array stopped, we need to go to Tools, and then we go here to New Configuration. Now this is really important. We need to select to preserve current assignments as all. So make sure to tick all. That's very, very important. Then check yes, I want to do this, and click on to apply. Now when we come back to the main tab, it all looks pretty much the same. All of the drives are assigned in the same place. But look here, it says that the parity drive is going to be overwritten. All data is going to come off that. That's because we're going to recreate the parity. But before we do that and rebuild the parity with our drives, well, obviously we're going to add the new drives. So here I'm going to change the slots from 4 to 7 to add my 3 other drives. So I'll quickly assign those drives to these empty slots. So now we can see when we start the array, the only drive that reports will have its data erased will be the parity drive because it's building new parity. So we don't need to worry about our data drives. So let's scroll down to the bottom and start the array and get the parity rebuilt. Okay, parity's building now, and if you notice, we can see all the different file systems across the disks from XFS right the way through to exFAT. So let's scroll down to the bottom and check parity is building. Yep, we can see it's building there. Again, it's going to take about 3 hours. Okay, so we can see the parity is rebuilt, and all of these drives are now protected, including our old 1TB drives. And if I look onto them, we can see all the files are here, and looking at the shares, we can see a collection of all of our data. So, a really awesome feature, I think, in 7.2, these extra file systems and how they can be part of the array. It really gives us so much flexibility in the OS. Now, don't forget that it also does ext4. I haven't demoed this here, but if you're using things like Synology, Ugreen, they all use ext4, so migrating your data into Unraid is going to be easier than it used to be. But anyway, that brings us to the end of this section. Alright, before we wrap up, let me show you a few smaller improvements you might have missed. First up, if you've got a 12th gen Intel CPU or newer, then check out the dashboard. If you remember, I said I was going to show you this when we were looking at the dashboard on the mobile device. Now, if I scroll down and I look at my processor here, we can see here it differentiates between the P cores and the E cores. So we can see on the dashboard exactly what's happening in the CPU. I really like that myself. I can see exactly the load across the CPU in a visual way. Next, if you're using NFS, exclusive shares can now be exported. And in my opinion, this is actually a big deal because exclusive shares bypass the fuse layer and won't give you stale file handles when mover runs. So in my opinion, the proper way to do NFS on Unraid. And finally, a small one that will save you some frustration. Unraid will no longer spin down drives that are running smart tests. Before, a drive could spin down mid-test and then fail the test and you'd have to run it all over again, but that's been fixed now. So there are plenty of other small improvements throughout the release, bug fixes, performance tweaks, stability improvements, but these are the main highlights. Overall, Unraid 7.2 is a really solid release. The RAIDZ Expansion and new file system support are genuine game changers for flexibility. The responsive UI makes management so much easier, and the built-in API opens the door for all kinds of community development going forward. Now, if you found this useful, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments which feature you're most excited about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.